Why did the auditor cross the road? Because they looked in the file and that's what was done last year. For those of you reading this that have never worked in audit, let me give you some background. Each job is run by an audit manager, and basically their word goes. Now the first rule of audit is you start with the walkthroughs, going through the entire process with an example transaction. Technically, in case you need to make any changes to the testing approach or risk assessment. But practically it's mostly so that you know what you're doing for the testing. But for this particular job, Deborah booked me in for a week of testing off-site before visiting the client for a walkthrough. And the working paper spreadsheet we record test results on was atrocious. I have 6 different reports for each sample transaction, and the WP doesn't detail which report the information is from. The formula used to calculate errors are a mess, full of hard-coded figures. It's a nightmare to follow. As I'm working through the WP, I'm making little changes, adding in the report name, moving columns around so they follow the order you encounter them on the report, changing the error calculations. I get it to a place I'm satisfied with it and hand it to Deborah for review. Well, Deborah is not at all happy. She's been doing this job for years and she liked it the way it was. I explained why I made changes and asked which bits weren't working for them and I could go back over those parts. As an example, there were parts of the paper that used different methods to display errors. I liked one better, so I used it across the paper. Deborah surely couldn't state that they liked it one way in one place but disliked it in another place. Right? Wrong. It was easier before. Deborah says she had to spend time trying to understand the changes, which meant it took longer to review. And then Deborah gives me the following instructions. Just use last year's template and enter this year's data. Don't change the template at all or any of the formula. So I did exactly that. It took about half an hour and the result was absolute nonsense. Even a glance over it would reveal that the error calculations were glaringly incorrect. I was hoping she'd immediately see this and we could have an adult discussion about how to change it. A couple months go by and nothing. I take a look at the file and the WP is completely different. It's not the same as last year's and it's not mine, and at this point I'm pissed. I drop in a feedback meeting because I tried to hand in work I was proud of, and if it's not good enough I want her to at least tell me how I can improve. I just want Deborah to engage with me at this stage. It turns out Deborah handed the job to someone else to redo. When they came back, Deborah was still unhappy and redid it again herself, making many of the same changes I'd made initially. As we run through I realize that Deborah's using a different report for the first section. So when she came to review it, she couldn't tie my figures up to the correct report, gave up after the first section, and instead of explaining the problem in a way that I could go through and fix it, just asked it to be redone in the prior year's format. Of course when I redid it I used the wrong numbers again. Moreover, if Deborah had booked the walkthrough in before I did the work initially, I'd have known which report to use and could have avoided the mess altogether. The budget is blown out of the water with all the additional time on the job. But hey, unlike Deborah, I'm not graded on that. Deborah doesn't sound like she's competent to do her job. What are you even auditing without version-controlled, traceable documentation? We are just finishing our audit and had to switch audit teams, like phoned up the company, had a WTF conversation and demanded a new team with competent manager, or we got a new audit company. We are essentially a small government that operates like 25 business. Each area has different financial rules, systems, like the hotel runs differently than our housing division that runs differently than our fisheries department, and so on. The leader of our audit team wanted us to present our info in a single form, and we had To keep saying but that's not right. Nope, one form, one tax code system. But some departments have taxes, some don't? Nope, figure it out. But that would be tax fraud. Don't care, audits have to be straightforward. Yeah, it was bad, I hope she gets fired. New team was great, if a bit lost since a bunch of documents were provided to team 1 that never were given to team 2 and had to be tracked down, and we learned to never give originals. This is what we call monkey see, monkey do. I used to do audit years ago and a few of my seniors colleagues were like that. In my short experience, malicious compliance is a daily thing for audit analysts. To avoid the cost accountant? That wasn't as satisfying as I had hoped. Doesn't matter which type of auditing you do, process, product, or personnel, there is always a Deborah lurking waiting to really screw things up because it's the way we did it before. The look on Deborah's face when the audit fails is almost worth the extra effort needed to redo everything to get it to pass. I once had to audit a company's AR from various federal government accounts that the government was legally obligated to pay back. My senior still made me test to see what we needed to reserve for cause that's what they did last year. Shockingly, they reserved 0 last year since you couldn't reserve for that kind of loss. Guess what we reserved for the current year?
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.